Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Social Inclusion and Community Safety Policy and Accountability Committee. My name is Councillor Nico Susmus, and I'm the chair of the committee. Before we start, just a few housekeeping points. The meeting is being live streamed to the council's YouTube channel, and by participating, you are consenting to being recorded. If the fire alarm sounds, either continuously or intermittently, I will adjourn the meeting. And please leave the meeting in an orderly fashion by the staff fire exit, which is behind me to my right. And officers will direct you to the assembly point. There is tea, coffee, and biscuits available in the staff kitchen next to reception, and toilets on my left-hand side. And if officers can please introduce themselves before speaking for the first time, and make sure your microphone is turned on when you're due to speak. Apologies for absence. We have an apology for absence from Councillor Sally Taylor. Councillor Mary is also unable to attend. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. And number 3, minutes. Do members agree the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 7th of February 2024 as an accurate record? Thank you very much. Those are agreed. Number 4 is an update report from the Prevent team. We have Ashia Esakji, who is the Prevent lead, to talk to us, and Neil Thurlow, Assistant Director of Community Safety, Resilience and CCTV, introducing the report. Matthew Hooper, Director of Public Protection, also attending. And of course, Councillor Harvey, a Cabinet Member for Social Inclusion and Community Safety. Always feel free to come in. Who would like to begin?
Yeah, I'll jump in if I can. Thank you. So thank you for asking us to bring this report. So Aisha and her team deliver the Prevent service in the borough. So I think the report sets out quite clearly what the team's focus is, what the team's remit is. And within the report, what we try to explain to everyone is how do we discharge the Prevent duty, which is the responsibility of the local authority and our partners. How do we understand the risk? And we spoke in the report around the counter-terrorism local profile, which is a document which sets out the current threats and risks that take place or that are seen in Hammersmith and Fulham. How and why the team address the emerging issues. The report talks quite a bit around the Gaza war. And the reason that we've been engaged in that is because of the trust and confidence that the Prevent team have with our communities, as well as also talking about what we've been delivering. So whilst I won't necessarily go into the detail of what the report is, because obviously I know that the panel will have read that, if I may just kind of highlight a few things. So the Prevent team is over a decade in existence and is a shared service with ourselves and RBKC. And that's borne by the Home Office identifying regions and areas where areas of profile would be created. Over the decade or more that we've been in existence, the team has gone through various changes and has faced various cuts and is now solely funded by both local authorities. That has meant that we've had to evolve and develop the way in which we deliver service on the backdrop of national and international conflicts that haven't gone away. The reason that we are now solely funding this service ourselves is that the way in which the Home Office calculate risk deems that the boroughs are not justified to receive government funding. And even though we don't agree with that position, and working with Councillor Harvey, we've lobbied against this for at least 2 to 3 years of the cuts have been coming through. We felt we have a duty and responsibility to make sure that we maintain the service as it is. The way that we go about doing this work has seen numerous cases, high-profile cases managed, and I'd ask the panel to be conscious that the nature of Prevent and the sensitivities around the cases mean that we can't talk about individual cases, and a lot of what the team do is confidential. However, we have managed risk and mitigated risk by working with some very vulnerable and complex people. The work of the team is also so well embedded that our communities come to us. So Aisha and her team will take phone calls day and night. And when the Gaza conflict started, when the Ukraine invasion started, they were the ones that were being called by the mosques, by the, by the synagogues, asking for help, asking for support. And they manage a very, very strong Prevent Advisory Group and and the Faith Forum, which bring all of us together. So the report kind of sets out the detail of what the team's been doing for the last 12 months. But the team has been in existence a lot longer than that. I think we should be very proud of the Prevent service that we offer here. Very proud of the trust and confidence that our communities have. Prevent can be, and is seen as an invasion of people's privacy sometimes because of the nature of what it's trying to do. But it's through the work of Aisha, Ayaz, Simone and Marilyn that they've got that confidence. And I suppose if it's okay, Chair, I welcome Aisha just to kind of touch on a couple of bits that she wishes to before we go over to questions as the Prevent manager. Aisha, is there anything you'd like to say?
No, I just wanted to say, reiterate what Neil said. Over 10 years, we've built a lasting and trusting relationship with our community partners from all different faiths. And when things like the Gaza war happens, it's good to see that, the trust and confidence has worked and people do come to us. We try and address issues before they actually become or they escalated. And I think that's one of the things that sort of we wanted to highlight, that we're able to have communities come to us and say there's these sentiments in the communities, these tensions in the communities, so that we can have a look, work with our communities to try and address them before they escalate or before they're hijacked by, harmful influences.
Thank you. Thank you for this, and thank you for the report submitted in advance. Are there any questions from the members? I have some questions myself. Sure, then in that case, I just wanted to ask you that you mentioned here in the report that there are just 7 London boroughs that will continue to receive Home Office funding. Could you tell us which ones are these, and how that is assessed, on what grounds?
Yes, so up until this year, up until the 1st of April, the Home Office had a prioritization process by which they would assess the threat and risk in each borough, and then they'd have like a league table. From this year, there are about 11 areas which lost funding from the 1st of April, including us. And next year, April 2025, the remaining boroughs, except for the 7 that you mentioned, they will also lose their funding. So from the top of my mind, the 7 areas are Westminster, Enfield, Barnet, Tower Hamlets, and no, not Waltham Forest. Just give me, I'll just have a look. But they're deemed to have the highest threat and risk currently, so they will be continued to receive funding from the Home Office. But they will also be, I think it's a 2-yearly process, they will be also reviewed, and those 7 areas can change and another 7 can come in.
Okay, thank you. Because you say in the report in paragraph 49 that HNF has historically seen significant, for example, Daesh extremist activity. Is there therefore an assessment that while this is the case historically, it's no longer the case and the threat is lower at the moment? So
how we were originally assessed is RBKC and Hammersmith Fulham, as the Home Office said, we were regarded as one area, so one Prevent team worked over both areas. However, when the Home Office do these assessments, they take various data from various sources, and when they take that data, RBKC's data is separate from HNF, so they don't see it as a whole entity. So therefore, the risk, we get pushed down the bottom because we're not seen as one complete entity. So that's where we're at a bit of a disadvantage.
I see. And now that we'll be funding the service ourselves or with RBKC, are we expecting any changes? Not necessarily, you know, reduction or uptake, but any significant changes as to the outlook or the, you know, what the service entails?
No, not particularly. I think we want to look at what the current threats and risks are, and we want to try and address those. So the police create a local counterterrorism local profile every 18 months, and they highlight according to them what are the current threats and risks locally, West London wise. And so we will be guided by that document.
And we'll be matching the funding that we were getting from the government, or is it not to the same?
So the government funding is zero.
Yeah, I mean, that we were getting from the government.
Oh, so
yeah.
If you go back a number of years, the government was 100% funding it. Last year it was 50%. That's when they put us on notice. So we've seen cuts, you know, 15%, 10% here and there. And what happens is that the government will write to you and say, and usually in December, and say next year's offer of money is this much. In December 22, they wrote us and said that we're going to reduce you by 50% and put you on notice, so that in March 31st, 2023, we cut all funding, and that then required us to do transitional work to plan for growth from the local authority to secure the funding and to make sure that we understood the risks and explored the options with it. So yeah, it's been a gradual decline over a number of years.
Okay, thank you. Another issue, I mean, you mentioned about assessment of the threats, and one thing I think the reports we keep getting, you know, public and news is that, and it's also in the report that extreme far-right terrorism is on the ascendancy and is now perhaps the biggest threat to British communities. Is Prevent equipped to deal with this, or is it more, you know, around faith-based terrorism, for example? Because a lot of it, even in the report, seems to be around that.
No, Prevent deals with far-right extremism as well as the Daesh-inspired extremism. So, you know, it comes under our Prevent scope.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, what I'd say is that people in the far right use what's occurring in the world or locally to justify their actions. So what we've seen during the Gaza war is, unfortunately, that has potentially caused divide among Muslim Jewish communities, and those that the far right will use that to target. I think what we're very fortunate here is that as faith leaders, the Faith Forum came together and they wrote to the Home Office and to the Home Secretary to raise their concerns about how they felt the war was playing out, and they stand together, stand united. But unfortunately, those that have got far right intentions do use these as opportunities to try and engage with more people than they would do normally.
And how? No, so of course, yeah.
Just to understand the link with far right and the Gaza war is what, that the far right are anti-Gaza, or how does the right fit in with that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so obviously we've seen a lot of protests in central London, and there was a protest, I think it was the back end of last year, might have been the start of this year, where the far right were around the cenotaph and they were having their protest. It's that sort of thing where they'll use that to bring people together, to use one person's conflict to maximize their own aims. Thank you.
And can I just ask, I mean, it's in the report, the repeated attacks on the Palestinian mission and how the person arrested was from Ealing. How does it work when someone is not from our borough, or at least our area, borough, Hammersmith, Fulham and RBKC? Do you work with the other boroughs and other authorities? Is there an exchange of information, as was the case here?
Yes, so in terms of the Prevent world, we have a London Prevent network. So all the Prevent coordinators, we meet once a month, and, you know, we sort of share information, we see what the common concerns are, and then we have sort of a West London cohort as well. So all the West London Prevent coordinators will come together, to see if there are any issues in their borough which are similar to the ones. And so accordingly, with the Palestinian mission attacks, the same perpetrator had attacked Palestinian restaurants and Palestinian businesses in Ealing. And so with that information, we shared the information and we managed, we shared it with the police and they managed to apprehend.
Thank you. And just a final question for me. I see at the scorecard about how we're delivering Prevent locally, that engagement with communities and society groups, civil society groups, seems to be the one where we receive the highest mark and the one that stands out. If you could just talk to us a bit more about, especially the Prevent Advisory Group and its successes and how it works.
So we set up the Prevent Advisory Group in December 2011, and we've met every month since then. And it was more about working with our communities to understand what the threats and risks were locally, because they were best placed to tell us, what's happening in the community, where they think the threats and risks are, and for us to work together to try and create and co-produce projects, strategies, so that we can work with them. We didn't want to go into the communities and say, we're Prevent and this is what you need to do to keep your community safe. They know their communities better. So it was about, how can we help you? Because at the time, Hammersmith and Fulham had a large number of young people that travelled out to the conflict zones. So we wanted to say to the communities, we know that this is happening. How do we prevent another individual from going out? What do you think is needed? And so that's how the Prevent Advisory Group developed. So not only did they help us co-design projects, but they co-delivered them, including our faith groups, which hasn't really occurred in other areas where faith groups have delivered on Prevent projects. So that's how the Prevent Advisory Group is still going strong 12 years later. So we're very proud of that. We set up the Faith Forum as well about 5-6 years ago. And again, it's bringing together different faiths to try and understand common issues, try and raise some common concerns, and share good practice around them. And I think the most important thing is we want to safeguard our residents here. And if there are people out there who may be concerned about somebody, they can come to us and say, we're really worried about this. And sometimes all it needs is to help, put some strategy, some early intervention in place for those individuals, give them the support they need to try and divert them away from, a path of radicalization that they may be on. So we've got the community's trust and we feel that, we can help and support them.
Thank you. So just to add to that, so Aisha should have blown her trumpet a little bit more. So Aisha's been here for the duration of the Prevent service and has an OBE for her work in the community. And that's through her work here, as well as other things. And I think if you go back through the journey, when Prevent came in, mosques wouldn't trust any officer going in and saying, I'm here from the Prevent service. And that was because, it looked like all Prevent work was focused on our Muslim communities. And through Aisha and through Ayaz, it's that consistent, regular approach of going in, spending time, hearing their concerns, responding to their concerns, and also helping with all the assets that the council has that can support. So housing, talking about benefits, talking about employment training, education, so that they see Aisha and Ayaz, not just as the Prevent team, not just as the council, but as a friend, a trusted colleague and a partner. And part of the Prevent service and the referrals which come in, which identify risk, predominantly will come from police and schools. And it's really hard, if not nearly impossible, to get community groups and family members to make referrals about someone that they know that's of concern. And with Ayaz and Aisha, without them, I'm sure this would never have happened. We've had a small number of referrals from mosques where they've identified people of risk. And I think it's massively down to how they engage, their longevity in the role, and that commitment that allows us to do that. And the Prevent Advisory Group, as much as the Faith Forum, are there, one, to give the voice of the group to ask Aisha questions, but also to hold Aisha to account. And there have been very difficult conversations at times around, you know, international or national policy and changes and stuff like that. But I just wanted to come in, Chair, because I think Aisha undersold the role of herself and Ayaz in making sure the Professional Advisory Group functions as it does. And that's because, as I say, she's been here throughout. And monthly meetings, as we know, is a huge commitment. And trying to get all of those members together is a complex and challenging feast, but one that we do very well.
No, thank you. Thank you for putting that on the record, and, you know, congratulations, and thank you very much, Aisha, for your work. Neil, you mentioned the part of it involves actually you being held to account. How does that, is that a normal thing that, you know, that the members or the participants will question decisions, or they will, put you in a difficult spot, let's say?
Yes, they will. I mean, if, like Neil said, if there's policy changes at, you know, the national level, and they're a bit concerned about how the policy will impact the community, then they will ask. And, you know, what we've done in the past is we've held events called community question times, where we get Home Office officials who have agreed on a policy change, and will bring the community together so they can directly ask each other the questions, because there's always a perception that they don't understand what we're doing and they don't want to listen to us. We bring the two parties together, and it's worked really well because, you know, the Home Office will understand the impact that their policy may be having on the communities, and the communities will actually understand why the government needs to change some of the policies. So those events worked really well. And it's made each side understand the other a little bit better. So yeah, where we've had those difficult conversations, we try and bring the decision makers and the community together so that it can have those frank and honest discussions together.
Thank you. Yes, of course, Councillor Dinsmore.
Thanks very much. Congratulations. Well, Echo, sounds like absolutely fantastic work. Two brief questions. One, you mentioned about referrals either from, say, faith leaders, if it's a faith-based extremism, or the police. Out of curiosity, when it comes to far-right extremism, is that mainly police referrals, or do you get people who say, my mates, you know, watching a lot of Tommy Robinson or whatever?
A lot of our far-right referrals have come from schools as well. So schools is probably the largest source of referrals that we get. So a lot of them come through there. We have had a couple of youth groups who have said we have some concerns about, you know, young people attending our groups who have said certain things. So yeah, it could be across the board.
And would you mind just giving one or two anonymized sort of case studies as an example of an individual? How does it actually work in practice? I mean, you advise schools on policies or whatever, or maybe on a macro level, but on a micro level, how does it work? If you've got an individual referred, how does the process work to prevent? Right.
So if a school is concerned about an individual, then we will we'll get the details from the schools, we'll pass it on to our police colleagues, and then the police colleagues actually do an assessment. There's a framework by which they do this assessment, and then they will come back and say, actually, yes, we are concerned about this individual. And we have what we call the channel panel, where we have members from education, the health service, you know, various council departments, the police. So we all sit around the table and we discuss this individual. And sometimes it might be that Prevent's not the best space to lead on this. So, for example, we have a number of mental health individuals referred who have mental health conditions. And sometimes it's just that they've not taken their medication, or there's been a relapse. And that's what's brought on something that they've said or something that they have expressed. And sometimes it's just bringing them back onto the medication, and that CT risk is gone. So it's, you know, sometimes it's just somebody's, you know, read something or heard something on social media, and they follow that person. And it's sometimes bringing them to a faith leader and having a one-to-one intervention to really understand, well, actually, that's not what the book says. This is what the book says. And the person will then say, you know, so we've had various cases where, you know, one-to-one interventions has really worked.
Thanks. Sorry, and just two more brief questions. Do you have sort of prevent mentors? Do you have people who, you know, used to be going down the wrong path that are sort of on the books, as it were, and they have one-on-ones as well and say, I used to read the same stuff you do, and how does that work?
Yeah, so the Home Office have a list of what we call intervention providers. So they've been, you know, scrutinized and their due diligence done. So there's a list, and you know, they cover the far right and all types of extremism. So sometimes what we do is when we assess an individual, we then have a look at the list and see who's best matched, who's best placed to deal with this individual and who would be the best person. So, and a lot of them are those who themselves have been in those situations before. You know, they've been part of, you know, extremist groups or, you know, banned groups, and, you know, they've come out of there, and they're best placed actually to work with these young people and say, look, I've been where you are, and, you know, it's not a good path. And it really does help.
Sorry, just one last question. Just the line between the police's role and your role, in the sense of, you know, obviously if somebody crosses the line and commits a crime, it might be a relatively minor crime, as it were, and obviously you'd still play a role in preventing them getting worse and worse. Or how does that work? Is there any leniency? Is there any conversation around, look, you've done X, and actually we could sort of throw the book at you, but if you commit to this program and de-radicalize, then maybe we can forget about X?
So there is a clear line. So if somebody has committed an act of terrorism, then we as Prevent cannot intervene, or we cannot work with them. Because we're in the Prevent space where no crime has been committed. However, in the last year, what the police have found is a lot of young people, and I'd say from 10 to 15-year-olds, they feature more not in the Prevent space, but in the Pursue space. So they've bypassed Prevent and they've gone into Pursue. But, you know, at the age of 10 and 11, how, you know, are we going to deal with these young people? So there is now some research being done that even in those cases, Prevent will still work with those individuals, like you say, to try and stop them from getting worse. Because, you know, 10, 11-year-olds, and we have a couple of those cases, you know, they're too young, and we still need to give them support and still need to work with them and try and see what early interventions we can put in place. So there is now this work being done between Prevent and Pursue.
Genuinely not a loaded question, but do you think like the Scottish government's hate law legislation would help with your sort of work with Prevent, or make it more difficult? Because obviously they've criminalized a lot of speech, and so once it crosses that line, it's kind of game over. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? I'm really not trying to politicize it. There's no SNP councillors, but I am just genuinely interested as to how that would play out.
It's difficult to say, to be honest. You will have some people who will be quite against, you know, what's being now banned. And, you know, we've had a couple of groups that have been banned, and people will pipe up and say, no, we support the ban. So sometimes it can go one way to say, well, actually, you know, you were wrong in doing that, and we still support that. So you will get those. And there are others who will accept it and think, and I think sometimes it might work that, you know, people see a clear line to say, well, actually, we can't cross this line, because if we do, then we'll be criminalized. So, you know, it can go both ways.
I just wanted to pick up on something Councillor Dinsmore asked and your response to it about young people. And I was wondering what, if any, overlap there is with our works with the gangs unit and youth violence prevention between Prevent and other departments. I don't know, maybe Neil, you can also speak on that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So what's fantastic, I guess, is that first of all, that the Prevent team, the gangs team, serious violence duty, which is discharged by the community safety team, will sit under myself and the community safety unit. With the work that we've got going on, it's a very mature relationship. So all officers are trained in RAP training, which is explained in the briefing around what that is. And so what will naturally happen is that at those conversations, which I described, where someone's discussed and it's not a Prevent issue, then the question is, well, who could help? And actually, if it's because they've been drawn into something, bless you, and the gangs violence exploitation team would help, then we can refer across. Simone, our education officer, works very closely with our gangs outreach officers. And Aisha works very closely with Gemma, the gangs exploitation unit manager. So it is that kind of natural thing of, we're always looking at, if we can't support, but they need support, who's best to do it. And with that kind of wider thing around violence and the serious violence duty and understanding why people are being drawn into violence, again, it's about looking at that person's needs. And if we think that they're being violent because they potentially have been exploited, not sexually, not around drugs, but around potentially third right, I know we spoke about far right rhetoric, then again, Aisha would speak to Gemma or the team and say, actually, refer it over to us and we'll have a conversation. So it's a very mature relationship, it's that dynamic relationship, but because each team understands the risks, understands each other's lens around that risk, I would like to suggest that we get it right most of the time, and that young person and their family supported in the best way for their needs.
So I think it's an interesting question because although on the face of it, criminal gangs may seem like a very different concept to groups of people that are allied around an issue of faith, actually the ways in which organised groups seek to exploit and get new people involved into what they're doing are actually quite similar. And so there is a read over from the prevent space to the gang space, and understanding the ways in which people can be exploited and helping protect them from that. And crucially, helping to identify the early stages of that, which is what prevent is all about, and making sure that we put in place the right interventions to prevent them from getting involved in those groups to a point where they can't get out anymore.
Just wanted to add, sorry, you asked me about the prevent process. So when the police do say we've got a referral and we'd like, so our safeguarding lead, Marilyn, she'll get the details of the individual, and what she does is she sends out the details to all our council departments, so the gangs unit, housing, everybody, to say, is anybody have any information on this individual? And then we collate all that information, we pass it back to the police. So in that way, we're always connected with the different local authority departments.
Now that the prevent program is funded locally, do you have more autonomy therefore in how you operate? I mean, when you were funded centrally, did you have to report back? Did they have a lot more control? Is it closer to the local community now being funded locally, or how does that work?
So I think a question that came up at the last committee on this, and while there is a degree of autonomy that will come with us funding it ourselves, we're still under the prevent duty, which is a statutory duty and set out in law, and will still be because of that duty, we'll be held against the 10 benchmarks that are included in the report. So our success in delivering the programme will be assessed against those 10 benchmarks, and that scrutiny will remain even though we're funding it now because it's a statutory duty.
Thinking, can I just ask, General, I mean, when I was first hearing about prevent, and I appreciate it was perhaps the early years of it coming into existence, we seem to only be hearing the bad aspects of it, and there was a lot of lack of trust from the public or the communities it was working with or for. Have you found attitudes to have improved over the years? Is there more confidence in what is happening? How are you finding the reaction, I guess, to prevent, both from other stakeholders, whether it's schools or whether it's from faith-based communities?
So I think I would say, yes, things have got better. I think I'd point back to the fact that the team is so established and been here so long. So we are lucky in that respect. I think prevent can still be seen as a worrying thing to talk about. And if you introduce yourself as a prevent coordinator, barriers can go up. But I think people understand what the prevent teams do now more, what that is, that pre-criminal justice space, as I spoke about. It's that early intervention support space. And I know that when the teams go in, they talk about it in that way. we also do a lot more training and a lot more awareness raising so that, the school teachers, professionals, etc., get to know what's going on. And with those PAC meetings and other forums, we can have those honest conversations. So locally, we're very lucky that that trust and confidence is there, that when we go in, we're going in because we've got a reason, and that we're going and we're clear about what we're getting in for. So I don't think that's the case everywhere, but I think here we're very fortunate that we have got that trust in the service.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from anyone? No, in that case, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I have more of a comment and observation, really. As Matthew said, it is preventive statutory duty, so it's very disappointing that the government have cut funding. We have had incidents in the borough. We've got large venues, free football clubs, music venues, and theatres. So we recognise the importance of keeping residents in the borough safe, as well as people that come to work here and visit here. And we will continue to fund Prevent, but we do hope that the government would actually fund it and review their decisions. So it's very disappointing that they have cut that funding, but we'll continue to be committed to supporting our residents. Our Prevent team and Aisha are highly regarded and they do fantastic work. So the credit, thank you.
Thank you. And just on that, a few times it's mentioned in the report that letters were sent or explanations were sought, but none were received. Have you found that to be the case? Do we expect that things will improve, and at least in the future, maybe we'll get some advance notice about funding or the future of the service?
Yeah, so I think the Home Office have been quite clear that the government's position is not changing, and that the funding won't be coming back. And I think we've worked our way through to reluctantly accept that. When it comes to the letters, the Faith Forum took a decision to write, as I said, to the Prime Minister and to the Home Secretary. And I believe as things stand, that was sent before Christmas. They still haven't had a response back in recognition of those letters. And that came from the Faith Forum themselves, and they're disappointed around that. So we keep lobbying, and Aisha speaks to her colleagues in the Home Office on a pretty much weekly basis around the whole Prevent agenda, and we will always ask about funds. But there's no indication that that will be changing anytime soon.
Yeah, Aisha.
Just wanted to add that you asked about the 7 areas: Tower Hamlets, Newham, Redbridge, Haringey, Enfield, Brent, and Westminster.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and thank you all for coming and for your presentations. And again, thank you for everything you're doing with the Prevent service, and congratulations on its successes, especially in the face of adversity and cuts. That brings us to an end of the reports. Last item, the date of the future meetings. Do members note the date of the future meetings, the next one being on the 24th of July? Thank you very much. And the possible topics to be considered at the next meeting, we have a suggestion for a review of the regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. Would that be coming from your team, Neil, I would imagine? Yeah. Thank you. And if we could also have an update on the law enforcement teams and everything we're doing in the community safety team. I think perhaps maybe it would be good to see something on the CCTV network we have in the borough, because I think it's now been a while since we heard from that team, and I've had some communications with them. Not to say that if something has changed, but it would be good to just have an update on any changes on that. Is there anything else, perhaps, Councillor Harvey, that is on the horizon of your portfolio that we should be aware of?
I would say we've got our hate crime strategy that we're hoping to publish soon. So that's quite a big area of work, and then we're doing some work around violence against women and girls as well. So there's quite a lot in the pipeline. And also I'd just like to mention that Matt will be leaving Hammersmith and Fulham. So we will, I think this will probably be our last PAC meeting. And thank you so much for your hard work.
Sorry, I was not aware. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for your time and for your help, both to the committee and to me over time. It's been very, very welcome and very helpful, especially for us coming in as new councillors. So thank you very much, and good luck in anything you do. Any other suggestions for any possible topics? Sorry, was there also a refugee strategy? I seem to remember. So,
Yeah, that's a work in progress.
okay, of course. Yeah. Neil, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so it was just to pose maybe for your forward plan considerations, really. Antisocial behaviour service. So we haven't spoken about antisocial behaviour for a couple of years. So maybe we should to forward plan that, and/or modern slavery and exploitation. Whilst we'll talk about violence against women and girls, modern slavery and exploitation would be another gender item that you may wish to look at, because we're doing a lot of work in that space. There's emerging space for us as well. So I would propose that you might think about that in the future.
Yeah, no, thank you. These are good suggestions, and obviously we have some time until then, so we'll have time to consider it, and of course let you know in advance so you can prepare the necessary reports. Okay, in that case, that brings us to the end of the meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for attending, participating, or watching tonight's meeting, and I'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.